Okay, so I've had this footage lying around since February, and I think I'd better do something with it before I forget about its existence. With the 5th film well and truly out of the way, and the toy line's second wave slowly making its way onto shelves, we unfortunately have to come to terms with a very sad fact. Other than the fact that the film is doing terribly at the box office. No, I'm unfortunately referring to Hasbro's insistence on reusing molds as many times as they can. This time, they've well and truly given up on making entirely new toys, because they feel like they can just use existing ones. That said, the selection process is rather weird, isn't it? Every time they start making rules about what they can and can't repurpose, they start breaking them again. First off, we get the same old Dinobots with similarly inaccurate decos. They're all uniform though, so at least they'll fit in as a cohesive team, right? Then out of nowhere, we get a new Scorn toy with the same old colours. The one toy that didn't need an upgrade.
Jesus Christ, it's
the worst goddamn Dinobot toy I've seen in years.
Then we get the same old Bumblebee toy. Then we get a new Bumblebee toy. Then, for some reason, Hot Rod gets his toy as a retool of Lockdown. Oh well, in that case, you really don't need a new toy for Berserker since he's already got a figure. Nope, he gets a new toy. Well, I suppose Dark of the Moon is too old to take toys from again, and the plastic amounts just wouldn't work, right? Back comes Dark of the Moon Optimus Prime. Okay then, if you start reusing toys, perhaps you could bring back the long haul one for Onslaught and Canopy. Nope, line finished, no more toys. All along with this, we're getting Generations toys re-released as movie bots, a combiner torso that doesn't have a beast mode, a return of the obviously inferior Leader Optimus from the first movie, which makes no sense when they've already got the Masterpiece figure on the way, and at the center of all of this is a lazy attempt at the first wave of Legion class figures. I mean, I'm all for the return of the size class towards movie bots, but they're literally reusing figures that they're already reusing in other box sets. Have some consistency, Hasbro. So, predictably, we're getting another use of the Revenge of the Fallen Legends mold because it's totally accurate. So I thought it would be a good idea to compare the small-scale bots from the first 3 movies. We'll go in the order of film releases, and already things aren't looking very promising. Unfortunately, as is the case with 99% of the first movie toys, the designers didn't quite know how to translate the complex designs into toy form. Most of the Legends toys got off scot-free, however the ones that bombed really bombed. Unfortunately, Optimus Prime was one of them. It's not very apparent in vehicle mode though, with a pleasantly dark colour scheme, a decent amount of flame tampos, and a nice long slender look. However, already we can see a problem. Only one smokestack? Really? People have theorized this is due to American safety laws, the very same that kept Megatron from being a gun and caused the reissued G1 Optimus to have his smokestacks clipped. However, on a figure this tiny, I don't really see why they wouldn't do such a thing. That said, the vehicle mode is never really the problem in the Legend scale. Mostly. No, usually that falls to the robot mode. A few steps of transformation later and, oh god, I regret everything. I wasn't exaggerating when I said this figure failed miserably. For starters, the proportions are way off. Although this is a common problem with Legends class figures, it seems to plague long-nosed Optimi specifically. It gives the illusion of legs being too long, when they're actually fine for the length, to be honest. It's the torso that's too short. And speaking of which, who the hell designed this? If you're gonna cop out and cheat on the torso, at least make it screen accurate. This isn't a well-crafted bulky chest. This is what the chest would be like if you went on a raw celery diet for 3 weeks. No, scratch that, 3 months! The head sculpt is also pretty ugly, but it's but a pinprick next to the fatal stabbing when compared to the horrible legs. I did say that the legs weren't longer than they should be, however their design is still the worst part of the figure. I mean, who the hell thought this transformation was a good idea? Folding away kill usually works well for small tabs, not entire chunks of the vehicle mode. Because it's basically got half his mass on the front of his knees, he ends up with huge gumboots that look incredibly out of place with the rest of the figure. The arms are pretty stock standard for a Legends figure, and I'm okay with that. Articulation is pretty standard too, with ball-jointed shoulders and ball-jointed hips. If you think I'm being too harsh on this version because they were all bad figures, that's not the case. A lot of them were pretty decent, and some of them, like Blackout, were actually stunning. This figure really saddens me because the basic design would have really worked well if they just tweaked the proportions and fixed the sculpting. Unfortunately, we've gotten stuck with a curse that has plagued Legends class figures until recently, and you'll see it very soon. With the success of Legends class figures reaching new heights after the movie's release, it made sense to continue the trend. With the premiere of Revenge of the Fallen, we got new figures of everyone, and there were vast improvements in almost every way. While most returning characters just received an update that retained the same idea, ones like Optimus and Megatron took a completely different direction. Also, there were a few isolated cases of reusing toys from the first movie like Ironhide and Grindor, who still to this day confuses me on whether he's Blackout or not. It wasn't as rampant as it is today, however, and I only know of 2 cases where this happened, but I digress. Optimus's truck mode is in some way an improvement and in others a slight disappointment. On one hand, the sculpt is a lot more squished and the grille section isn't as bold as it used to be, and there's not even a lick of paint. Also at the back here, they don't really try to hide the arms as much. Please ignore this acid damage, by the way. This happened at a Halloween party when someone accidentally emptied the contents of a rather dubious glow stick. Optimus got off lucky, others not so much. On the other hand, the paint is a vast improvement over the original. Although far less accurate, and featuring fewer flame tampos, it's much more pleasing to look at. The windows are also a lot easier to see now that the whole thing is lighter and more vibrant. And look! 2 smokestacks. See, Hasbro? It's not that hard. Side by side, there's no contest. The vehicle mode in Revenge of the Fallen easily wins. This is an easy case of deviating from the source material accuracy to create something much better suited for the scale. The transformation takes a completely different route to that of the first movie, and the figure is better for it. The way the leg mass is handled is leagues above the first attempt, which was a choice that made me question human intelligence. The rest is basically par for the course. However, the transformation of the waist can get a little annoying because it doesn't really tab in, instead just slotting. The robot mode isn't perfect, but compared to what we got earlier, it's basically the next trigger happy. Or at this point I should probably say topspin, because I wrote this script ages ago when I didn't have topspin. We still get problems in the proportions where the torso is ever so slightly too short and the waist is basically non-existent. However, it's not a deal breaker when they have been made much more slender to compensate. The arms, once again, are pretty stock standard. However, they pack an extra bend to the elbow due to their new transformation. Some might complain about the gorilla arm effect, and by that I mean proportionately, not articulationally. But honestly, all Legends arms are wonky in some way, so there's no use complaining. Finally, the head is much better. Although a bit mushy, and let's face it, it's impossible not to be at this scale, it's far more faithful to the source material. Unfortunately, we do get some downsides. Because of the transformation, there's almost no resemblance between the movie chest and the toys chest. You do get a couple of sculpted nubs to mimic the animation model's shoulder doors, but it's honestly a half-assed attempt, and I don't really see the point. Also, even though the legs are better than the first version, they still kinda suck with these hollow sections between the calf and the foot. None of these are a deal breaker though, as at this size there's little you can do, and it's still miles above the first movie. One neat feature is the combining gimmick. You may recall in the movie that Optimus took Jetfire's corpse and used it to power himself up. You may also recall that the leader class figures had this functionality built in. Well, did you know that the Legends class figures can do it too? Legends Jetfire is a pretty special figure, somehow managing to nail the appearance of his robot mode at such a small scale, and it only cost him his articulation because everything else is on point. Not sure about the Decepticon symbol though, as kids may have a hard time telling he's supposed to be on Optimus's side. Jet mode is almost there. It's nice and long and has plenty of detail, but there's also a face on the back. It's easy to ignore from most angles though. To combine, you just peg Jetfires onto Prime's back. There's no official transformation, but it's a fun little extra that satisfies those who don't want to buy both leader class versions. And let's face it, no one wants a leader Jetfire nowadays unless they want to combine it. Seriously, that figure sucks. Dark of the Moon is where things took an interesting turn. Previously, Legends class had been a representation of the movie characters at a smaller scale, whereas the line above it, known as Scout class, was used to give us smaller characters. Since only a couple actually appeared in the movie, most of them were original characters with crazy and out there designs, coupled with surprisingly intuitive transformations. Dark of the Moon was different though. They tried to implement a sense of scale and a unique play pattern into the smaller figures by taking Scout class and using it to represent larger scale figures, if that makes any sense. Of course, Transformers scale doesn't matter anyway, but the point is both lines underwent a rebranding. Whilst the main three will be bundled together under the term MechTech, the two smaller ones will become the Cyberverse line. It is here that the original Legends were renamed Legions, while the Scout class figures were renamed Commanders. Of course, Optimus had to take the larger size class, being the leader of the Autobots and all, but there's a problem. He's the same figure. No, seriously, it's like they KO'd the Legends class figure and upscaled it. Granted, that's a pretty big generalization, but you'll see what I mean later on. The vehicle mode is sculpted well, but painted terribly. Once again, we go back to the dark color scheme, and I'm instantly reminded why we left it in the first place. The flame tampos are okay, but they don't pop as much as they should. The back section cleans up nicely, but there's no paint to pick it out. The biggest shame, though, is the windshield. It's all painted in the same metallic blue color just to save on paint. You may cry typical Hasbro in this instance, but looking at any modern figure this small, you know they would have compensated by just painting the window and nothing else, skipping the top part entirely. This just ruins the look in so many ways. In case you were wondering, no, there are no other examples of silver on this figure, so they could have easily reallocated some of the budget. Not even on the jetpack, because it is in fact molded in gunmetal, not painted. Oh yeah, here's a jetpack. The guns and the jetpack store on the back of the vehicle mode, and honestly, it doesn't look too bad. Of course, in comparison to the previous two, it is almost double the size, being in a different size class and all. Between Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon, the transformation is nigh identical. The only minor differences are the existence of the backpack and the feet sliding out instead of folding, which eliminates the hollowness. Everything else is the same. The shoulders rotate around, the waist twists and turns, and even the head reveal is the same. The end result is also nigh identical. The bulky legs, the inaccurate chest, the kibble-heavy forearms, the head on a flat panel, they're all exactly the same, albeit done with a lot less pizzazz thanks to the paint. The head doesn't come across very well with its severe lack of paint, and it's not helped with the redesigned chest. The inaccuracy on the previous version was a blessing in disguise, because this spike belly just looks stupid without the extra muscular torso. Also, this is not a waist. At all. It's way too thin. Whatever it is, it does like to untab regularly though. Articulation is pretty much the same as the previous version, aside from an added knee bend. The proportions do look a lot better this time around, but it's still not perfect. But even if he looks good from the front, the back is completely Kibbletown. They try to emulate the design the movieverse has, but they fail miserably. There is a solution though. Give him a jetpack. You just plug it in, detach the guns, and put them in his hands. And it's a little better. It's still fairly disappointing when compared to his original extras, and definitely not worth inflating the price by an extra $5. Now, before I go into the size comparisons, a little more history is required on why certain size classes are named what they are. We already know that the original Legends class merged into Cyberverse and became Legion, only here's where things got real. Cyberverse continued into the Prime line, only without the extra weapons that used to justify the $20 price tag. From here, Hasbro did something completely bonkers. They split the lines again. Only this time, Legends referred to the Scout or Commander size. What? That's not how it works! You've got the name wrong! This version of Legends class continues to this day. However, then Prime's sequel, RID, comes along and Legions now? So you steal the Legends name and put it on the Scouts, and now you force the original Legends to be called Legions? Also, why are these still $20? I mean, now it makes more sense with the inflation, but why did these inflate before everything else? Looking at their sizes, the plastic quantity has gone down. You may say it's the same with the other figures, but they haven't gone up in price, have they? Well, actually now the Premiere Edition figures have, but you don't see the same with Voyagers, or Leaders, or Titan's Return, eh? The first two in Jetfire are about the size of a modern Legion figure, whereas the last one is the size of a modern Legends figure. Confusing, isn't it? So all in all, whilst I can see why the Revenge of the Fallen Prime is the best of the three, I'm still not happy with how this system of reusing toys has turned out. Whilst I found in my research for this that there have been examples in the past, it's never been to this scale. It seems like Hasbro's only putting in half the effort into their Legion class figures as of late, with RID basically re-releasing the first wave instead of coming out with new figures, and these constant bloody restocks of the same generation's Legions at Target. I was going to do a review of one of them, but after seeing them time and time again, I'm not sure I have to do it for a while yet. What I've experienced is that they've been made so much that the molds are starting to break down and the QC is going downhill. I'm worried that the same will happen to poor old Optimus here, if he hasn't ended up that way already. And already has got to deal with worse colours than the original on both modes being inaccurate now. Am I excited for the new ones? Of course I am, and I intend to pick up most of them. Am I excited for the re-releases? Well, let's see. Nope, and since he's already appearing in the Infernicus Combiner team, nope. At this point, the whole repaint thing is just pathetic. I'm sorry, but even though this movie has gotten some really fantastic toys when it makes new ones, I think Hasbro has gotten a bit complacent lately. In fact, I'm kind of interested to see what would happen if Disney bought out Hasbro. Maybe things would change. Oh wait, not for the better, would they? That'd be the end of third party. Come on, Hasbro! Put your back into it!